5 steps that I go through every time to prepare a flower order. The process is pretty intuitive these days, and the more you do it, again, the easier it will get. So the first step is to set your budget. First, you want to set your budget for your flower order. I aim to spend about 25 to 30% of the retail price that I'm charging on the flowers. So that means I'm looking at the total value of the quote and subtracting costs like vases and candles and delivery, etc. Whatever the total amount that I'm charging for actual flowers is, I set myself a budget about 25% of that amount to spend on flowers. So for example, a wedding invoice might total, $4,000, which includes maybe $250 for delivery, $250 for other costs like rentals and ribbon, etc. So it leaves me a balance of $3,500 is the amount that I'm actually charging for flowers. So 25% of that is about $875. So that's my budget for what I can spend on buying flowers for this wedding. Sometimes I'll push it to 30% or give myself an extra 5% for wiggle room if I end up adding something, or I always go to the nursery at the end and buy a bunch of flowers. So I make sure to leave some room for that. And this slide that you're seeing right now is a very simplified version of how I work up my budgets, but in the course we go really in depth about that, and I show in much more detail about every step I take when figuring out how to price things and how I write my invoices, including all the hard goods and labor and delivery and everything. So the next step is to choose the base flowers for your arrangements. When you begin writing your order, you want to choose your base or focal flowers. So you probably only need 2 to 3 varieties of these per arrangement, so keep that in mind when you're picking out varieties at this point. You'll figure out how many you actually need later on. Right now, we're just choosing the flowers. So this is, the bride says she wants poppies or she wants roses. So this is that flower that you really want to speak in your arrangements. So I would say, actually, poppies or roses in this bouquet. Maybe the ranunculus could be considered a focal flower too. So the next is to choose the varieties of accent flowers. And this is based on your color and texture and scale, which I'll get into a little bit later. So after you have the base flowers chosen, think about your color, texture, and scale elements in your arrangement. You want to pick out a few varieties of textural flowers or seasonal foliages to take those base flowers in the direction you want them to go. I typically plan to have 3 to 4 of these elements per design. These are what I think really make your arrangement special. So in this arrangement, I have that variegated leaf and the angel vine that's kind of running all throughout the arrangement. And those are really interesting foliages, I think, that kind of set the tone for this arrangement. And those were actually both just cut from plants that I bought at a nursery because it was the middle of winter and I live somewhere where nothing's growing outside. So the next is to create your recipes. Once you have your wish list of flowers that you want all together, come up with your specific recipes for each piece that you're planning on producing. So you'll come up with your list for the ingredients that are going in your centerpieces, your aisle arrangements, your bouquets, etc. So the recipe for the arrangement I'm going to demonstrate for you later on will come up here. I'm also going to talk you through how I choose the flowers and my theories for color and texture and scale, so you know you're making a unique arrangement. When I write a recipe, it's to help me order. It doesn't mean that every single arrangement will have 16 roses, a whole bunch of grass, etc. I just do this so that I know that I'm ordering enough, and it helps me guide freelancers also when it comes time to create arrangements during production. So for you guys just starting out, this is the best way to stay on top of your budgets and allocate the appropriate amount of flowers during production. Sorry, let me take a drink real quick.
No worries.
The last step is to share order and inspiration with your wholesaler. After you've brainstormed and figured out how much you think you'll need, tally your quantities and place your order with your supplier, remembering to also share an inspiration board with them so they can get a visual for what you're trying to achieve in case they need to make suggestions. But for the record, I don't always follow my recipes once the flowers come in. Sometimes things come in looking different. Maybe the orange came in a little bit more peach or vice versa, or this leaf is too tall and you were planning on it for the centerpiece. So you can still have freedom to play around with the flowers, I think, once they come in. You don't need to stick to that. You can move the flowers around. Maybe you move that branch that ended up too tall to the ceremony and you trade it out for something else. But by starting with a structured order, you at least know you have enough flowers for each element, and it's easier to plan for your budget.
So it's so helpful to see everything broken down step by step. It really does make the whole ordering process seem so much more straightforward and methodical. So once you've placed the flower order, talk us through next steps. How are you able to take these flower orders and create these beautiful, unique designs every time when it comes to arranging?
Yeah. My approach to design is something that has evolved over the years, of course, but there are some core concepts